Hello Internet, I'm Yasser from the youth newsroom of Open Democracy, and today we have two brilliant ladies from Open Democracy youth newsroom. I will let them introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Dinara.
Hi, my name is Karishma.
What did you just learn today?
Well, the first lab that I had in the morning was about the civic education, so how people teach democracy at schools, and we had a very interesting initiatives from Ukraine and from Japan, and both of them were very interesting, especially the Ukrainian one, because I'm coming from the post-Soviet country, so we have like the similar situation, and it was really interesting to understand how they implement the democracy in the classroom.
I agree. I think it's very interesting when we are able to compare initiatives in two different countries with two different cultural backgrounds, and then we are able to look at what worked and what didn't, and how we can implement it in our countries. So my first lab, we were discussing how to increase civic participation in democracy, and there were two initiatives that we were talked about. One was by Stanford University, where they crowdsourced initiatives, and the second one was by the French government, where they crowdsourced ideas from people about climate change and what do they want to see about climate change. And both of these are very interesting because it raises a lot of questions about artificial intelligence, about the validity of the data, about reasonable conclusions that can be drawn from this data. And we had an interesting debate about it in my lab.
So in your lab, we were talking about the experience in each country and how to implement it in your country.
Yes, they actually didn't talk about how to implement it in my country, but there were two ladies from Russia. They were saying like, how do you see it happening in Russia when teachers they are made to, on elections, they are made to choose like a certain candidate, so they don't have any like chance for openness and democracy and transparency. And then the speakers told like, oh, we think it's easy. You just start from something. You are being open. You tell the truth, and you start with yourself. But then I said that it's not really happening in some countries because you can be prosecuted for that. Yeah. So then they told like, maybe if you can't say truth, you shouldn't be telling lies and multiplying lies. And that's what I really liked about this session. I think this is a brilliant quote that really helps for promoting the democratic education.
So yeah, democracy is not that easy.
Yeah, it's not,
exactly.
Sure.
I was in the lab of media. They taught us about the news, how to get people engagement, and how to empower people to go to the streets and act in many campaigns. But what I found challenging is getting free people from the internet, I mean from likes and dislikes and comments to the actual street. That was something that was a challenge for social media until this day. And until this day they're figuring that out, how to get people and empower them to be in the street. That was my challenge. How, in which lab were you, and what challenge did you find in this lab?
Well, I think it was really successful in Tunisia, right? Yeah. It was recently we saw how media can actually turn in life, and I think it depends on the context. If people are ready, it will be really easy to move from the media to the streets and to the real actions. But if people are not ready, you can't push them even if you are very active and doing everything right on media. So it all depends on the local questions or local context and local mood of the people.
And what is the challenge also did you find in your lab? What did
the challenge that okay, I see. Well, it wasn't really challenging, but this question from the Russian ladies saying that it's not always true to build democracy, etc. It was a little bit challenging for the speakers. And also another thing about Japanese initiatives, they were telling how they are integrating immigrants from different countries. I think it doesn't apply to many countries because Japanese are very close society, and this case is a little bit unique, so it can be generalized. So that was a challenge. It's not a challenge, but maybe an implication of this lab.
And you?
Well, I think the most important challenge that was faced in our lab was the idea of artificial intelligence, and this idea that how much of artificial intelligence is just right, because you don't want to use too much and to disrupt the validity of the data that you collect, but you don't want to use too little and not let a lot of people participate in democracy. So this idea came out a lot. How do you choose people to represent? How do you make sure everybody has access to the internet so that they can give their opinions, like you said, in your lab? Well, we went a bit further in our lab and we discussed. So we discussed about what we do next with all the data that we have from online. And one of the ideas that came out was to use algorithms to manage the data. So to use algorithms to make this data structured, and this data can then be presented to our politicians, to our leaders, to tell them what exactly people want. But I think an important conclusion that we arrived to in our lab, and an important conclusion that we should all remember, is that artificial intelligence is not a substitute for decision making. It's not a substitute for public polling. It's just to give people an idea. It's a starting point. And I think that was important, the starting point. And that was also the challenge that we faced. Because it's only a starting point, you need as many opinions, as many ideas, as diverse voices as you can for the voices to be heard and for the ideas to be understood. And then the question then becomes, how do you get these people? Because a lot of countries don't have access to internet, and all this is contingent on the internet. So I thought that was fascinating, that discussion.
Yeah, I like the conclusion about the artificial intelligence. Okay, I will ask you another question. It's about us, youth. What do you think the role of our youth in this forum? Did they play an important role in this forum, or just hanging around and making just shirt for us and will be just an image for them? Did we play an important role in this forum?
Well, I think that nowadays the majority of people on the earth are very young people. Therefore, it's needed that we are educated and our voices are included. And I like the French Minister of Education saying that we want you to take our places and we want you to be prepared to take these places. And I see how the organization works. We can ask questions, we can challenge the speakers, and we can do anything we want here. And it's also very well organized. We don't have to think about anything else, only about how to promote the democracy and how can we contribute. I think it all depends. If you really want it, you can do it even through hardships, even through obstacles. But here you have all the conditions to do it. So I think it's not formal and we can really contribute here.
What's your opinion about it?
I agree, but I agree with everything that Dinara said. But personally, I don't think I contributed much as in terms of opinions. But I've definitely taken a lot from the forum itself, because I've learned a lot particularly about data, because I think the whole idea of democracy is very dependent on data. The more we know about what people think, the more we can do what they want. And if we don't know what they think, if we don't know what they desire, we can't do anything with it. And that's how people start thinking that democracy is useless, democracy is failing, and so on and so forth. So while I don't think that I have been very engaging in this forum, but I do think that I have taken a lot of ideas, and a lot of these ideas can be, I think, implemented in my home country, and that's great.
Oh. Yeah. I think it's our role now to get that position and play that important role.
Hello, my name is Fernando. I am a citizen journalist for openDemocracy. Today I have the pleasure to be with Simon and Lasha, two youth representatives here at the World Forum for Democracy. And we would like to ask you a few questions about your experience today. What do you think about the labs you were participating at? So let's start with Simon. Could you please explain a little bit your experience, at least in the first part of today's event?
Sure. So far it was an amazing experience. Actually, I enjoyed a lot the labs. I was in the one about the refugees without borders, how we can connect the education world with the refugee crisis that we are facing in the Western world. And actually, I found very interesting that today we had the opportunity to have very inspiring projects, but very concrete projects. So what can we actually do to face these issues, because yesterday, of course, was amazing to listen about nice talk, to listen about amazing speeches, but today we had the opportunity to go into the concrete, to understand what can we actually do in our territories to face the problems that we are talking about.
Great. Before just like explaining a little bit more, actually asking you a few more questions regarding that lab, let's actually hear from Lasha. What was your impression the first half of today's event?
The labs that we went to, they were extremely important because especially I would like to underline one of them that was about the street art and actually like transforming the education for children into allowing them to express them through taking part in a lot of exercises and programs through the street art. Because nowadays we struggle a lot with the education. What I mean is that there are many people who don't find themselves to fit into the system that we have nowadays. A lot of them who would like to express themselves, the ones that would like to dedicate their lives to serving specific ideas. So the street art is something that allows them to try to think and try to express what this idea means for them and how they would like to express it. What's also important is you heard a lot of people speaking up about their own ideas, about best practices when it comes to the similar ideas that were presented at the labs. So I think it was extremely important for learning it, but also like having a say if there is something you're proud of in your country, so that you actually allow them to know about this.
Great. So let's start with the first topic. Let's explore a little bit, about the refugees, issue like here in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. What do you think, after having experienced these labs, what do you think the youth can do in order to also contribute, in order to solve this particular issue we nowadays face?
I think that the first thing that we can do is to analyze the problem and understand that it's not a crisis, because we are talking about a crisis for years, but actually it's not anymore a crisis, it's just an historical process, and refugees come because, of course, there are disparity around the world and they are looking for happiness, they are looking for a better life, and we can't stop them actually. So what youth can actually do in the society is to be able to give to the society a different perspective about the refugees, and I'm talking of the refugees not just as a problem but actually as a resource, because they are, I think, very important for our culture. They are very important to broaden our view and to broaden also our cultural diversity in our own countries. And so I think that as yet we are empowered now, and this is a good starting point actually, the World Forum for Democracy, to activate in our territory and to try to change the things, not just to act but just let people understand that there is a different point of view of the issues. So I think we have an important role in this age actually.
Great. What do you think, are the challenges to particularly solve this issue? We have, list a few, important aspects of, really, involving the youth to participate, to give ideas. What do you think are the challenges, concrete challenges that we can, at the same time, focus on, not only in the refugee classes at the same time, but also in terms of democracy, of, bringing new ideas and, allowing people to participate more?
So it's of course important that we are active and we use our thinking, we use our energies, and I think it's important to start, even if you can think that you don't have the capacity, you don't have the talent to act. Actually, start is it's at least a starting point, and it's important so to be part of the society, to be active part of the society, of course. So I think that our energies are actually our talent, and we can contribute to the democracy, because the democracy is something that you have to care about, is something that is changing through the time. So actually with our energies we can give our contribute to the democracy to grow and to be better off in the future.
since we are talking about democracy, let's now listen a little bit from Lasha. You have participated in this lab which actually connects, democracy with art. What do you think we, like using tools as, arts, but also like other tools that we can actually, learn not only from schools, but also, on the streets, how can these tools, better contribute to have a more democratic society where participation is at the core of it?
Well, I would like to refer to one example that I actually also raised at the lab. I was traveling to Iran earlier this year, and I was in the city, in the capital, in Tehran. And there was this point that we decided to take a walk and go to different streets and see the architecture. But what actually I saw was there was a lot of street art. And then the place which you felt was actually quiet and silent. You could really see that the walls were screaming. They were like trying to express a lot of things and a lot of ideas and a lot of emotions. So I think when we combine that, in a way, the people who are participating in the street art, in a culture, they somehow to me form this invisible network. That very often when you travel and you go to different cities, you find the street art that are very common and very similar to the one you found in another one. So they somehow create this network and they are connected. And when people see that the street art allows you to express yourself, the public space that you use for drawing, that's actually a public space that actually belongs to you. So when you use the public street for painting, you actually reclaim it back. You actually claim that you own it, and that's yours. And in my opinion, this is a very direct way of democracy. And that's something we need to tell to children, to adults, that when you see a street art in the street, you might think, oh, you're making my street look ugly. But at the same time, this is a way you portray that you own this place. This is a democracy, in my opinion, reflected in the street art.
Let's talk a little bit more about democracy, and since we are kind of combining these two aspects together, let's listen a little bit about what are your experiences in terms of democracy, and why is it important to both of you? So we may start with Lars at this time.
Yeah, democracy for me is quite important. I was born in a country which is now completely different. I'm from the Republic of Georgia, and Georgia has gone through this way of being under the Soviet occupation for 70 years. And then after the independence was restored, the whole new process started. So for me, it's extremely important that people are giving a say, that they are able to say their opinions, they're able to express themselves. And democracy for me is something that allows you to do that, respecting other people's opinions, realizing that being different and thinking differently, it's actually very good. Because even though the human beings were equal, we're at the same time equally different from each other. So democracy for me is something that allows you to live this diversity, which is beautiful.
That's great. The same questions goes.
I'm from Italy, so of course I consider like from a country that is a democratic country. But actually today I'm very scared of what is happening around Europe, because people just think that democracy is something that when you reach democracy you live in a democratic country for always actually. But I think that is not in this way, and we are always at the risk that our democracy will be washed off and eventually became maybe something different. So I think that today it's important for everyone to be active in our democracy. And I'm talking that people are talking about revolution, people are talking about to change the things, but I don't think that revolution is just going to the square and protest. I think that the biggest revolution that today we can do is actually get up from our sofa and do something, do what we like actually, and don't be just passive in our society, don't just complain, but actually act. And of course, everyone can contribute to the democracy, and I think that it's important also at the European level to be actually to listen that people want democracy, and actually the feeling that today Europeans as against European Union because of the refugee crisis, because of the many issues, the austerity. Actually, the main problems of European Union is that it's not a democratic community.
Just in one sentence, what was the major takeaway of these 2 days we have experienced yesterday and today?
That we have to take care of our democracies.
Democracy is a learning process which never ends.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.